Okay, this morning we'll continue with our study of the book of Hosea. Yesterday we got up to the second child that was born after the marriage of Hosea and Gomer. And her name was called, by divine command, Lo Ruhamah, right? Lo Ruhamah. And we talked about how this was a prophecy that God was not going to show the northern kingdom of Israel any mercy, at least not in that particular generation, right? It was basically a prophecy that the northern kingdom was eventually going to be destroyed. But at the same time, God also prophesied that mercy would be given to the land of Judah. This was probably fulfilled when Hezekiah faced besiegement from the Syrians, and yet God delivered them with a mighty hand, right? Without even bow, sword, or shield, or any of those normal weapons. Okay, and we left off also talking about the key to unlocking this mercy is, if this is correct, right? If the prophecy is fulfilled in Hezekiah, then we can look into Hezekiah himself. Right? He was a man that was able to allow God to be gracious on the people. Right? He humbly turned to God. He prayed to him, right, and trusted everything to God, and God showed them mercy. So today we can find mercy in the Lord in a similar way. Okay. So NYTS, I think, is a time where we hopefully, little by little, humble ourselves and fully surrender ourselves to God. Right? Sometimes it could be very quick, in like maybe one NYTS really is a big transformation. Sometimes maybe it's year by year, there's like a little bit of an improvement. But in the end, hopefully we can truly humble ourselves and ask God to be our master and Lord. Okay. Let's now go to the third child. Let's go to Hosea chapter 1. Hosea chapter 1 and read verse 8 and 9. Hosea 1, 8 and 9. Let's ask, I think it's Faith from San Jose, right? Okay, Faith. Okay, yes. So a third child is born. This is a son, okay? According to verse 8, is a son. And the divine command is to call, this should not be her, it should be him. Should call him Lo Ami. Let me change that real quick, okay. And Lo Ami means not my people. So you guys, I think, can start to pick up a little bit of Hebrew now, right? Lo, what does lo mean? Like no or not, right? Yeah. So then Ami means my people. I think is people, and then Ami means is a possessive form. Ami. Yeah. Okay. Here the father isn't specified again. It just says she conceived and bore a son. So just take it for reference. Maybe is a child of harlotry, like going back to chapter 1, verse 2. And again, the name is prophetic, okay? The phrase or the word Ami is actually seen a lot in the book of Exodus. Okay. In fact, you can find it 17 times in Exodus. It's like a term of endearment. Let's go to Exodus chapter 3 as an example. Exodus 3. Verse 7. Exodus 3, verse 7. Ian from Toronto. Or, yeah. Okay, yeah. God said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people. Ami, right? Ami. Also, if you read verse, I think this chapter has more. Okay, verse 10, chapter 3, verse 10. Benny. Yes, okay. All right, so obviously when you read it, you can read it really fast and not really sense its meaning. But here, God is clearly associating himself with the Israelites. These are my people. They belong to me. Right? They belong to me. But by the time of the prophet Hosea, this relationship was completely broken. Okay, Lo Ami now, Lo Ami. But you can also see there is, it's not something that happened overnight. It's centuries and centuries of Israelites' unfaithfulness. Okay, so don't think like, oh, God just abandoned them, like because they had a little fight, okay? Between a husband and wife. Oh, they just fought over whether the toilet seat should be down or should be up. No, right? Okay, forget it, we're gone, right? No, it's like serious infidelity, time and time again, right? Over centuries. So this is eventually what God sadly said, Lo Ami, okay? And this is also, I didn't write it here, but basically this is also another prophecy about how the Israelites will be brought into captivity. They will be destroyed. They will be destroyed. No longer God's people and no longer allowed to stay in this promised land. Okay, so these are the three children that were born after Hosea and Gomer got married. Right? But now as we move into this final section of chapter 1 and into chapter 2, verse 1, these next three verses move into another prophecy. Okay, so far, these three names are associated with a lot of negativity. Okay, so far it's pretty negative. Jezreel. What's the meaning of Jezreel again, Preston? God sows, right? But it's basically like God is going to sow destruction. Right? There's going to be punishment on the house of Jehu. What does Lo Ruhami mean, Ted? Lo Ruhami? Hama? No mercy. Okay, so exile, right? Annabelle, what does Lo Ami mean? Not my people. So all of this is pretty negative. But as we move on to verse 10, then there's a shift in God's tone. And he's promising that there will be a future time that his people, that the Israelites will be restored to him. Okay? And this passage refers to all three of these names again. But instead of being something negative, like these three names that were like kind of curses, it becomes reversed. Okay? So, while the fate of Israel is God's destruction, at least for that particular generation, there will be a day when they will be restored to him. There will be a day that they will be restored to him. So let's read Hosea 1, verse 10. Verse 10. Let's go to Nicholas.
Hosea 1, verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, there shall be said to them, You are sons of the living God.
Okay, let's take the first half first, right? God says, Yet the number of children shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. What does that sound like? Who do you associate that phrase with? Like sand of the sea. The number will be like the sand of the sea. Yes, Abraham, right? So God, right, that was part of God's covenant with Abraham, saying that his descendants would be like the sand of the sea. So this is another way to say that the covenant, that broken relationship, is restored again. Right, that the Israelites will once again prosper. And then the second half of verse 10, it says, And it shall come to pass, right, so in the future, in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, there it should be said to them, You are sons of the living God. Right? So from Lo Ami, right? Originally not my people, then they can become the sons of the living God. From something that is like very sad, like completely broken off. You're not mine. To you're my children, right? You're my sons. You're my, very close. And then if we follow along that train of thought, if you jump to chapter 2, verse 1. Chapter 2, verse 1. Just read the first half. Kyle from Ontario. Chapter 2, verse 1, the first half. Okay, right there, right? Say to your brethren, my people, right? Which is Ami again. Ami. Okay, the name Lo Ruhama, the curse there, the negativity there is reversed. Please read the second half of chapter 2, verse 1. Kyle from Ontario. Yeah, mercy is shown. Okay, so in Hebrew, Ruhama. Okay, Ruhama. And during this time, something interesting will happen. Let's read verse 11. Vivian. Verse 11. Yes, keep reading. Okay, yes. So in this future time, the children of Judah, the southern kingdom, and the children of Israel will come together. And then they will appoint for themselves one head. Right? So there would be a reunification, actually, of this broken nation of Israel. And then the reunification would be under one head, so one leader. And that will be a very great day of Jezreel. Okay? So here, Jezreel is used again, and it's used in a positive way. Okay? That God is sowing restoration. Actually, if we go back to the meaning of Jezreel, you can kind of interpret it two ways, right? You could, I said it means God sows, but you could also say it means God scatters, right? So scatter is more like the negative connotation. Sowing has a little bit more positive connotation. So great is the day of Jezreel. Great is the day of God sowing this prosperity again. Okay. So when you read this, Hosea chapter 1:10 through chapter 2, verse 1, did this actually, when did this happen? When did this happen? Did it happen historically? Did it happen historically? Let's ask Max. Okay, when did it happen historically? Huh? Oh, 500 something BC, when they, I guess, returned from exile? Is that what you're referring to? Okay. Yeah, I guess you could kind of see that, like, because eventually when the Israelites, the northern kingdom was taken to captivity, and then later the southern kingdom was taken to captivity, right? So later, it didn't really distinguish between northern kingdom or southern kingdom anymore, and they all came back to the land of Israel, right? And it says they were, united, appointed for themselves one head. Okay, so they didn't have a kingdom anymore, but okay, yeah, I guess they had a leader like Zerubbabel. Okay, Zerubbabel, there was a head. That is a possibility, right? Because God, again, showed mercy to them. But this is probably also, okay, and more likely, a prophecy of the Messiah, okay, of Jesus Christ. Okay, of Jesus Christ. That when Jesus Christ came, the Israelites, or the Jews who had already been out of captivity for a few hundred years, but then they were now under the Roman control. They were, in a way, reunited. Okay? And at that time, God accepted them again. Right? We will talk more about this in the next chapter as well, okay? Because there's more to say about this. Okay, so this is basically the content of chapter 1 and into chapter 2, verse 1. Okay, so in a lot of prophetic books, you'll see these prophecies like this that maybe, that probably does have a historical fulfillment. Sometimes no, though, okay? But the prophecy more likely is probably referring to Jesus Christ. Either the coming of Jesus Christ, or also possibly the coming of the true church in the end times too. Right. So you can have to look at the prophecy sometimes from multiple perspectives, multiple levels. Okay, let's now go into the next chapter. All right, so we saw in the first chapter we see the marriage of Hosea and Gomer. We also start to see possibly that Gomer already is unfaithful already, right? That she has children that the father isn't really specified. Okay. And so there is a clear rift between Hosea and Gomer when you read chapter 2. And so as you're reading chapter 2, verse 2, and going towards the middle of the chapter, in the beginning, it seems like it's just talking about their marriage. But by the end of this kind of long section, it's clear it's not just talking about a single marriage. It's now talking about God's relationship with Israel. Okay, so the writing is kind of interwoven. The language interweaves these two thoughts. Okay, you have the physical marriage and this physical infidelity of Gomer with Hosea, but that's reflecting the greater infidelity of Israel with God. Okay, so let's look at some of the things that happened. Okay, so on one hand, it's probably describing Gomer, what she did against Hosea. And then, but we also have to think of it symbolically and metaphorically. This is also how God sees what Israel did to him, right? So let's read verse 5. What did they do? Hosea 2, verse 5. Paul. Yes, okay. So here, Gomer and also Israel, she is already clearly unfaithful. Okay, she stated out loud, "I'm going to go after my lovers." Right. So this might be like a flashback to a fight Hosea and Gomer had. I don't know. Right. And you can see in Gomer's mind, she feels like those lovers are the ones that have provided a lot of these good things to her. But then at the same time, it's talking about Israel. Right? Israel went after other gods, these other spiritual lovers, spiritual husbands. And Israel thought that all their blessings came from these gods. Okay, do you guys see the parallel? And then she did this very enthusiastically too. Let's read verse 13. Verse 13. Let's ask Yining. Okay, right? Here again, read it from two levels. Gomer went after these lovers, and then she was wearing earrings and jewelry, right? For women, okay, I'm not a woman, but when you wear necklaces and earrings, it's probably for special occasion. Is that, I don't know, is that true or? I don't know. Yeah, usually. Yeah, let me think. Usually, when you're wearing that, it's for something special, right? But I guess maybe you can also normally wear it too, just as a normal adornment. Okay. But I think the way I read verse 13 is Gomer did this very enthusiastically. Oh, I'm gonna do this and try to impress those lovers, right? But now, spiritually speaking, Israel, right? Just think about it spiritually. They also are really excited to go after these gods and to show maybe, yeah, they're attracted to those gods, right? Okay, but God says that those lovers will eventually disappear. Let's read verse 7. Hosea 2, verse 7. David Wu. Okay, so even though she felt so excited to go after these lovers, but eventually she found that she couldn't find them, couldn't yeah, they disappeared. They either abandoned her or, just didn't want to have anything to do with her. Right? So that's what Gomer encountered. But this is also what God is saying about idol worship. You go after them, but you'll find it very dissatisfying. You'll find that there's no answers there, that there's no satisfaction. Okay, so during this whole time, Hosea and also God, what are they feeling? What are they feeling? Let's read chapter 2, verse 8. Chapter 2, verse 8. Let's ask Isabel. Yes, okay. So here is kind of God speaking, but also, Hosea's point of view. Hosea was the actual provider of all these things. Just like the true God is a provider of all the wealth that we have, all the blessings that we have. And then we also read verse 13 already. Now the last line says, she went after her lovers, but me she forgot, says the Lord. Have you guys ever felt forgotten? Yeah, it's actually very painful, right? Like, especially if it's a loved one that you feel should have remembered you. Okay? So in the future, when you do get married, you have to remember your spouse. Okay, always think about them, even though they're not around. Yeah, gotta think about what they might need. Right? Okay, so this is some of the things that were happening in the marriage, and also, therefore, in Israel's relationship with God. So what were the consequences? There's a consequence for all that infidelity, right? Okay. Here the language is maybe more from God's point of view, okay, of how he's going to punish Israel. I'm not sure if Hosea actually did these things. But like in verse 3, let's go to verse 3. Let's go Titus 2:3. Okay, right? So she will be like stripped, exposed, shamed. Right? This is also in verse 10. I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers. Like, did this actually happen in Hosea and Gomer's relationship? Maybe, right? Maybe like one night Hosea was like in his bed, like, hey, she's not in the bed. It's like, where could she be? She went to that guy's house, and then it's like, like over there, and then like let the guy know, hey, this is the woman you're with right now, right? Like, this is the type of person. I don't know. This is just my imagination. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Verse 6 also says that. Says, I will hedge up your way with thorns and wall her in, so that she cannot find her paths. Right? Did that happen? Did, like, maybe for a time Hosea tried to like lock all the doors? I don't know, okay. But again, maybe this language is more from God's point of view. Right? So Israel will be besieged, right? Walled in. literally walled in. Okay, Samaria, or like the capital of the northern kingdom, will be besieged, and then will be overrun. Let's read verse 12. Hosea 2, verse 12. Let's ask Megan.
Verse 12, and I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, of which she said, these are my wages which my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall devour it.
Okay, so here is more clearly about destruction of the land, right? So I don't know, unless the lovers did give Gomer fig trees and vines. I don't know. Maybe she planted them, and then one day Hosea was like, just pull them out, right? I don't know. I'm thinking about like a fight that they had. Okay, but I think this is more about the language of how Israel will be overrun with enemies. Okay, the beasts of the field shall eat them, right? So it's going to be desolate. Right? And okay, verse 13, I will punish her. Yeah. So those are the consequences of this unfaithfulness. God also will take away all the physical blessings. Okay, verse 9, for she did not know that I gave her grain, new wine, and oil, and multiplied her silver. Verse 9. Yeah, verse 9 says, therefore I will return and take away my grain in its time and my new wine in its season, and I will take back my wool and my linen given to cover her nakedness. Okay, so she did not acknowledge the true source of her blessings, so the blessings will be taken away. And then joy and religious freedom will cease. This is also probably more talking about what will happen to the Israelites. Verse 11, Hali. Yes, okay. All of this will cease, and that's what will happen during captivity. Okay. But in chapter 2, verse 7, as we read, it says, then she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. Right? There's a sense of regret. There's a sense of self-awareness and reflection now. Does this line sound familiar? Does it sound like something in the New Testament to you? Edward. Oh, it looks like you need the answer. Does it sound familiar? I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. What does it kind of remind you of? Anything? Maybe Vincent, does it remind you of something in the New Testament? Of what? Something in the Old Testament? Oh, which one in the Old Testament? Okay. Yeah. But that's a good thought, a good connection. But that was more of complaint rather than regret, right? So there's something in the New Testament. Okay, let's go to Mark. Yeah. Yeah, I'm reminded of the incident of the parable of the prodigal son, right? Remember? He had lost all his wealth already. He spent it all in prodigal living. He was tending swine, and he saw that the master was giving pods to the swine to eat, and he's thinking, wow, if I could just go back to my father's house, right? And just even be a servant, because it'll be better than my situation right now. Okay. Yeah. So that's a regret, right? And repentance, even self-awareness. Okay. So this whole metaphor and incident in chapter 2, hopefully, or it's not the full chapter 2, but the first part of chapter 2, hopefully can give us some reflection too about how we might sometimes treat God, right, and treat our Lord Jesus Christ. Even though we don't have physical idols, but sometimes we do have hidden idols, right? One time I read a book, a Christian book, and even though this statement isn't like, you don't see it directly in the Bible, but he was saying that, how do you know if you have an idol? Basically, anything that you treat as if it's your significance, it's like the meaning of your life, it's your security, your sense of security in life, right? The source of your wealth or source of your satisfaction, right, in life, that could be possibly an idol, right? Because all those things actually should be attributed to the true God. But like, let's say we take money, for example. Okay? We think that that's, the meaning of life. Right? My whole life should be about making the most money. The more money I have, the more satisfaction and security I feel. Wow, then this is looking like a God now, right? In truth, we should really seek God as the meaning of our life, as our security, see Him as the ultimate source of blessings. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy chapter 8. All right, don't forget this, okay? Eventually, when you become really successful and are making a lot of big bucks, right? Because you guys are going to make big bucks, I know it, right? Right? A lot of the TJC youth are very blessed by God. You're making the big bucks, right? And don't forget, this is all from God. Let's go to Deuteronomy 8, verse 18. Deuteronomy 8, verse 18. Let's ask Pei Yu. Actually, maybe back up, go to verse 17 and then 18.
17. Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. 18. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant, which He swore to your fathers, as it is this day.
Yes, okay. God didn't want the people to forget Him, right? Didn't want people to forget Him and to lift up their hearts, right? And think that everything was from their own hands, right? God wanted them to remember, it is God who gives you the power to get wealth, right? Why can you make the big bucks? Because God gave you opportunities, right? That you could be in, like, especially Canada and America, right? Yeah. To be here is already a great advantage over other parts of the world, right? The average salary that you make graduating from university in the US is something like 40,000, right? What about in Taiwan? In Taiwan, what is it? Let's ask Taiwanese. 景怡，你大学毕业哦，然后在台湾一般可以赚多少一个月？20几万台币，是不是？不可能，太高还是 too？ 太高啊，已经太高了，哇 ，OK， 是差不多多少？sorry， 我说错了，不是20万，我说2万，我的意思是2万 ，sorry。我中文 So how much, like, okay, at most 30,000 NT, which is like 1,000 US a month, right? So your average annual salary, if you grew up in Taiwan, in a normal situation, you make 12,000 a year, right? 12,000 US a year, okay? So, yeah, okay. So, just by being here, having the the privilege to go to university here. Obviously, our costs are all higher, okay, higher than Taiwan. But the potential that you can really make is, a lot higher. So why can you make the big bucks? Okay, opportunity. Secondly, right, you can go, and many of you are going in college right now, right, and can get a higher education. This is already better than 90% of the whole world, right? Most people your age in other parts of the world didn't have the opportunity to go to college, right? Didn't have the opportunity to go to college. And then God also gave you health and a sound mind, and also, healthy emotions, that you're stable too, right? So God gave you all of that, and that's why you can really eventually make a lot of money. So don't forget this, right? Don't just pursue after money and make it your God and think it's like your everything, and then forget the one who actually gave it to you. Yeah, so we have to be very careful about any any idols that are in the heart. Yeah, because those really can be hard to detect. Okay, hard to detect. Yeah, and a lot of times you can also investigate or detect those idols by the decisions you're making. Okay, analyze the choices you make, especially when there's a choice between God's kingdom and something else, right? If you are often sacrificing the kingdom of God, like not choosing the kingdom of God for pursuits of other things, it could very well be that those things are becoming your idol, your God, right? Okay. And, the thing is that, a good job or like other things like maybe family, love, marriage, children, these are all blessings from God too. But if sometimes we ignore the kingdom of God for those things, like for travel, pleasure, like leisure, those are all blessings. But sometimes if we overemphasize those, right, and we're when there's a conflict of interest, we just keep on choosing, money, family, children, or whatnot. Yeah, then really maybe we are starting to treat them as idols. Okay, but we have to remember, anything that is physical, one day is going to pass away. Right, one day is going to pass away, no matter if it's money or also a loved one. So even though God does bless us with it, or with them. And of course, we treasure them and love them, okay? And then, of course, use money as a tool, right? But in the end, please know that everything physical has its limitation. Therefore, it's not worthy to be a God, right? One day, it could be taken away. One day, they might not be by your side. But the one who will never depart from you, right, if you grab onto him, is God himself. Okay, so let's not follow after the path of Gomer or the Israelites. It sometimes can repeat itself, okay, even today. Okay, let's take a break for exercise. Let's bow our heads and pray in silence. Okay, so we covered Hosea chapter 2 from verses 2 through 13. Okay, very clearly we see that there was a great unfaithfulness in Gomer and also in Israel, right? And before we move on to the next section, I think it's good to review what are some Christian teachings on marriage and divorce. Let's go to Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19. So I don't have a slide up about this, right? But let's go here. Matthew chapter 19. Okay, let's read from verses 1 through 6. Matthew 19, 1 through 6. Let's go to Arian.
Matthew chapter 19, verse 1 through 6, verse 1. Now it came to pass when Jesus had finished these sayings, that he departed from Galilee and came to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. Verse 2. And great multitudes followed him. He healed them there. Verse 3. The Pharisees also came to him, testing him, and saying to him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife just for any reason? Verse 4. And he answered and said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? Verse 5. And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Verse 6. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate.
Okay, and then also verses 7 through 10. 7 through 10. Let's go to Ethan. Ethan Chow.
7. They said to him, why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away? 8. He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, forbidden you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. 9. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery, and whoever marries her is divorced, commits adultery.
Verse 10. Mhm.
His disciples said to him, if such is the case of the man with his wife, it is better to not marry.
Okay, yeah. So here, Jesus Christ talks about, very directly about marriage and divorce. There were some Pharisees that were trying to test Jesus, right? They knew about a particular statute in the Mosaic law where a husband that was not pleased with his wife could write this certificate of divorce and divorce her. But eventually that statute was abused. Okay, it was actually abused. That certificate of divorce actually was to kind of protect that woman too, for her future. But anyhow, what we see here is that Jesus, he lets us know, okay, he lets his followers know what is the original intention of God when he established marriage. Right? What happened in the beginning? Right? In the beginning, it says God made them male and female, right? And then man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. Right? So God has specifically made us humans male and female. There's an intention there that one day they will get married, right? So marriage is between a man and a woman. Okay, so even though, some people say Jesus never said anything specifically against like homosexual marriage and things like that. But here it's very clear, Jesus did talk about what the original intention of marriage is. Okay, so Jesus said, male and female were made, and then they will leave their father and mother, and then eventually get married. When they get married, the two will become one flesh. Okay, so what God has joined together, man should not separate. So God's intention is when after you get married, right, a man and a woman get married, they will be joined together, and that will be a permanent covenant. They will be one flesh. They should not separate. Okay? Man should not separate, whether a third party or one of the two parties themselves. They should not separate from one another. Okay, and then he clarified the only exception in verse 9 is sexual immorality. Okay, if a spouse is discovered to have committed sexual immorality, like adultery, then it is permitted. Okay, it is permitted to divorce, because that really is it's a serious offense to the covenant that they made with each other and with God. Right? This is they were supposed to be one flesh, but this person joined themselves with another. Right? And So in that case, you are allowed to divorce. So if we go take this and you apply it to the situation with Hosea and Gomer, and then also with God and Israel. Technically, right, because of Gomer's infidelity, technically because of Israel's infidelity, there could have been a permanent separation, a permanent divorce. Right? That's perfectly legal in God's eyes, perfectly acceptable. But this is where we then see that great love of God, and also that great love of Hosea, okay? That what Hosea was called to do. Even though Gomer was so unfaithful, chasing after lovers, so excited to go after these other lovers, right? Yeah, and God saw the Israelites so excited, going after all these other gods that were not gods. He still wanted to be with them. He didn't want to permanently cut off the relationship, right? So this is what we're kind of starting to get into when we go to the second half of chapter 2. Okay, despite, legally and technically, there should be a divorce in a way, right? It's a great offense, one of the greatest offenses you can do to your spouse, right? But God still wants to be with them, okay? So as we move on to the second half of chapter 2, right, we really see God is not going to permanently forsake Israel. Let's now read verse 14 and 15. Hosea 2, 14 and 15. Let's ask Brandon, please read.
14. Therefore I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfort to her. 15. I will give her her vineyard from there, and the valley of Acre and the door of Moab. She shall sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt.
Okay. Yeah, so again, the language here has two levels, referring to Hosea and Gomer, but also between God and Israel. And God is saying, I'm going to allure her. Right? I'm going to even though, there is a separation, right? Or even though Israel will be taken exile, right? Taken to exile. God is going to allure her again, be kind to her again, and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfort to her. Okay. And then it says, I will give her her vineyards from there and the valley of Acre. Okay. This is talking about exile and then also return from exile. Okay, let me just double check the valley of Acre. Right? Okay, yeah, valley of Acre is connected to the Achan, right? Achan. So this is in the land of Israel already. So initially, God will bring her into the wilderness. This is like exile to Assyrian territory, Babylonian territory. God will speak comfort to her. Right? Some of this is found in the book of Isaiah too. And then I will give her her vineyards from there and the valley of Acre as a door of hope. She shall sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. So there's going to be a time where God will be kind again, just like how he initially brought the Israelites out of Egypt during the time of Moses. Okay. And during this time, there's also a change in the people. Okay, let's read verse 16 and Yeah, let's read verse 16. There's a change of heart in the people. Let's ask Evelyn from Cerritos.
Verse 16. And it shall be in that day, says the Lord, that you will call me my husband, no longer call me my master.
Okay. Yeah, so God can foresee the time where the people call God my husband, right? They also want to be with God, right? And not just calling him my master. So this is a very interesting change, right? I think this, counselors, hopefully you can develop a homework assignment based on this, okay? I don't know how to exactly word it, but these two titles are very different in character, right? Master and husband. When you think about the word master, what are some thoughts that you associate with that? What do you think about that? Let's ask Alvin. What do you think? Like a ruler, yeah, okay. Like a ruler. So if you call somebody master, then who are you, Alvin? Who are you? Yeah, you're the servant, right? Okay. But then what about husband? My husband. That should have some other feelings and associations, right? If you call somebody my husband, then who are you? Who are you, Julia? You're the wife, right? Okay. So, yeah, this is like a lot of like rules, duty, right? Servitude, right? What else? Yeah. Okay. Sometimes our faith is like this, right? We just see our faith just as a set of rules. We see God just as an authority figure only, right? If you see God only as an authority figure, it's not going to be very pleasant, right? Eventually, it's not going to be very pleasant. But here, right? No, my husband. There's a love. There's an intimacy. There's a yeah. Over here, you could get a sense of like a reluctance. But here it is like a willing, right? Willingness. This is very cold in a way, but this is very warm. That's the associations I get, right? I get with these two words. And of course, there's probably much more. So, like the homework that I'm trying to get you to think about, like maybe write a little bit about this, right? Okay, so again, counselors try to phrase it better, but yeah, who is God more like to you? Right? Is he your master? Or is he your husband? Why? Why do you think that way? And then if it's more here, because maybe at your age, maybe it's more like this. Okay? If it's more like your master, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think you need, or like, how can you transform this relationship to make God your husband? Okay, so counselors massage that a little bit and okay, make that sound better. Okay. Okay, so, going from my master to my husband, I think is a very important transition in your faith. Right? This also, I think, has like more of a fear. Right? Doing things out of fear. Like if I don't do it, then oh no, right? Consequence. Yeah. Yeah. But my husband doing things out of will like love, like because I want to, right? So I feel like I also had to go through this type of transition. I grew up in our church, thank God. Learn about the Bible, right? Learn about this is what we can do, cannot do, right? Yeah, okay. This actually, yeah, but then thank God through time, through experience. I think I feel like, yeah, still also, it's always a work in progress, but I feel like doing things not just because of duty anymore, right? Because God is so wonderful, right? God is so wonderful. So this concept also, this kind of just reminded me. A lot of youth have a question. Right? Even the J1 SSC a couple weeks ago, they go, how far is too far? Right? J1 SSC a couple weeks ago, how far is too far? I know it wasn't a question about running, okay? This is a question about like purity, right? What is the line? If you have that type of question, your relationship with God is still my master, right? But if your relationship with God is my husband, your concept will be like Ephesians 5, verse, I think 10. Let's go there. Ephesians 5:10. Ephesians 5, yes, 5 verse 10. Can Chantel please read? Okay, trying to find out what is pleasing to God. Right? It's completely opposite directions. Do you see what I'm saying? Completely opposite type of thinking. This one's like, what can I do to the ultimate limit so that I don't get kicked out of the house? Like my wife doesn't, how annoying can I be so that my wife doesn't kick me out of the house, right? But this one is, what does my wife like? I'm going to try this. Oh, this year's birthday, I gave her this. Oh, she didn't really like that. The reaction wasn't, okay, let me try something else, right? It's a completely different thinking. Completely different thinking, right? So, again, that's also related to this question, okay, this homework assignment. Yeah, how do you view your faith, your relationship with God? Right? So if you really love God, then how far is too far is not even a question. It's not even in your mind. Right? Ryan and Aaron, you following? Okay, all right. Yeah, you're not even thinking of like that way. You're thinking, man, I want to make my spouse happy. I want to make whatever can make them the happiest. Okay, so let's reflect on that question. Okay, again, counselors, make it better. Okay, make it better. Okay, yeah. So Hosea 2:16. That's a very, very good verse. Let's make that a memory verse. Okay, let's make that a memory verse. Hosea 2:16. Okay, also, I will take from their mouth the names of the Baals, and they shall remember by their name no more. Right? I mean, we can all, I think, kind of relate to this. Imagine if on your future spouse's lips, they keep on talking about another guy. Right? That's really, really weird. Okay? Right? Okay, so God is gonna take, like they're no longer gonna be talking about Baal, right? About like, yeah. So there's a change. Okay, there's a change in the people. That's why God's also there's a kindness. Okay, and then God is going to restore the covenant. Let's read verses 18 through 20. Hosea 2:18 through 20. Let's ask Rebecca. Okay, here is God's promise to Israel, to future Israel. He's going to give them safety, right? Like, so the beasts, the birds, the creepy things on the ground, the sword, God is going to shatter from the earth, right? No more harmful things around them. And they can lie down safely. Okay, so they'll feel security with him. And then he says, I will betroth you to me forever. Okay, there's no more separation. No more broken relationship. And God says, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, in loving kindness and mercy, in faithfulness. Here, this is a kind of like related to their culture and even cultures today, where when somebody, a woman is betrothed to a man, the man will pay so-called a bride price, right? Like a 中文聘金, right? Yeah. So this is what God has done, right? God will do, and this is the evidence of their commitment. God will base this relationship on righteousness, justice, loving kindness, mercy, and faithfulness. Right? And then they will also know the Lord. Okay, let's also keep going. God's continuous kindness. Let's read 21 and 22. 21 and 22. Let's go Annie. Annie from Queens. Yes, so God will answer. Right? He will answer their call. And then bless them. Right? All these things, grain, new wine, oil, related to physical blessings. And they shall answer Jezreel. They shall answer Jezreel. This is like a recognition that God is the source of all these things. God sows. God's the one who gave them. Right? Yeah, so all of these former curses, again, are reversed. Jezreel becomes something very positive. Ruhama. Oh, okay, we didn't read 23 yet. Let's read 23. Yu Qian. Yes, okay? So all those initial curses are reversed. Like, God is going to sow them for himself in the earth. Like, they will have, like, take roots. God will have mercy on initially those who did not have mercy. And then God will say to these who were not my people, my people. So this is very similar to the end of chapter 1. Okay, so this is a very beautiful passage, right? From verse 14 through 23. And when was this eventually fulfilled? Historically, maybe some of it was fulfilled when they returned from exile. Maybe some of it, right? But clearly in the New Testament, it is fulfilled. Okay? By Jesus' time, this is when Hosea, right? These prophecies are fulfilled. Let's go to 1 Peter 2. 1 Peter 2:10. First Peter 2:10. Okay, let's go with Calvin. Calvin from Vancouver. 1 Peter 2:10. Okay, right? Peter is obviously very familiar with the wording in Hosea. And now he's talking about the church at that time. Right? He's talking about the church at the time. And verse 9 is usually a verse maybe you memorized before too. Like that, the church is a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own special people. Right? And so we once were not a people, but now have become the people of God. So for Peter, he clearly sees the fulfillment of this during his time. Okay, let's also read Romans 9:25. Romans 9:25. Romans 9:25. Bethany. "26. Okay, here's a combination of Hosea chapter 2:23, I think, and then also chapter 1 verse 11. Okay, from Hosea. And what is Paul talking about here? Paul is actually talking about the Gentiles. Okay, that especially the Gentile Christians at that time, the apostolic time. They had nothing to do with God's people initially, right? They were separated they were foreigners and strangers, right, to the people of God. Right? But now they are fellow citizens. Yeah. Ephesians says that the Gentiles initially were aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenant. Okay, that's Ephesians 2 verse 12. But through Jesus Christ, through the Jews rejecting the gospel, rejecting Christ, salvation went to the Gentiles. And so the Gentiles who were not a people became God's people. So this obviously continues to be fulfilled today in the True Jesus Church too. Okay. So we can see that it was fulfilled during the apostolic time. It is being fulfilled right now. It could also be a prophecy of a even future time. A time that hasn't happened yet, at least based on our observation. Let's go to Romans 11. Romans 11. Romans 11. Let's read verse 25. Right, Romans 11:25. Chloe.
25. For I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own opinion, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come.
26.
And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away ungodliness from Jacob.
27.
For this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins.
Okay. Yeah. So here Paul is talking about his understanding of the gospel and the Israelites. Right? That at that time Paul saw most of the Jews basically were rejecting the gospel already. Okay. Every time he tried to preach, it was basically almost no Jews were believing. But this happened to Israel, right? Like God kind of put blinders on their eyes. So what? So that the Gentiles could believe and be justified by faith. Once the number of Gentiles is filled, and we don't know when, because right now it's still going on, then all Israel will be saved. Okay, so there is a future time when God will be kind again to Israel, and they will go from this too, right? From my master to my husband. They will believe in Jesus Christ. Any questions on that? So the primary fulfillment of Hosea 2:14 through 23 is not necessarily historical, but it's more about the church. Okay, what's going on in the church spiritually. Okay, let's move on now to chapter 3. Hosea chapter 3. All right, let's read verse 1. Hosea 3, verse 1. Catherine, please read. Okay, thank you. When we read this verse, we can kind of also trace the marriage story of Hosea and Gomer. Right after the marriage in chapter 1, happened. There were some kids that were born after this marriage, and then Hosea 2, we could see like vignettes of their rift and fights and things like that. We don't know the details, but Gomer became enslaved in some way. Okay, she was not, it's clear in verse 2, okay, it's clear in verse 2. She was no longer with Hosea. And Hosea had to spend money to redeem her, or like to get her back. So you can see some type of like an enslavement going on. Okay. So in verse 1, God commands Hosea to love, quote, a woman, unquote. Even though Gomer isn't named here, it should be pretty clear this is referring to Gomer. Right? God didn't say, go and love your wife, because technically at that time, Gomer was no longer his wife. Right? She was a woman. Okay. And she had been somehow enslaved to another. And Hosea, he did just as God commanded. Right? I'm sure, yeah, it probably wasn't easy for Hosea, right? There's already a lot of history, okay? I don't know if, like as a preacher, sometimes you visit families, and then sometimes you have to counsel marriages, and there's sometimes a lot of history, bickering, and who did this to who, and then now God's telling Hosea, go and love her again. Right? It must have been pretty difficult. And Hosea goes and does it, right? Because he knows God's divine command. And it says in verse 2, he bought her for himself for 15 shekels of silver and 1.5 homers of barley. Right? This is actually, relatively speaking, not that much money. Okay, it's actually not that much money. Let's go to, just for reference, Exodus 23. Exodus 23. Verse 32. Exodus 23, verse 32. Let's go to Nancy. Okay, this is the wrong verse. Yeah, let's see. It's chapter 21 verse 32. Yeah, chapter 21 verse 32. Nancy. Okay, yes, all right? So this is just for your reference, right? There was a law back then that if an animal seriously injures a servant, this is the compensation that you should give to that person, to the master. So it's 30 shekels, 30 shekels. Let's also go to Leviticus 27. Leviticus 27, verse 4. Leviticus 27, verse 4. Let's go with Benjamin. Leviticus 27, verse 4. Yes, okay, so here, if I'm reading this passage correctly, like you could dedicate certain people, right, to God, and then there should be a valuation. Okay, yeah, and so for a female that's dedicated to God, it's 30 shekels again. Right? So this is just for your reference to let you know that what Hosea eventually used to redeem her was not that much. It was only 15 shekels and 1.5 homers of barley. And to me, I think this is more or less reflecting the very dire situation that Gomer had gotten herself into, okay, by that time. She was indebted to something and no longer herself free, and then just using a little bit could redeem her back. Right? Okay. And God is now using this incident to reflect his enduring love for Israel. Let's go back to Hosea 3, verse 1. Okay. Yeah, why did God tell Hosea to love Gomer again? It says, because it's just like the love of the Lord for the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love the raisin cakes of the pagans. I think that extra detail there is pretty telling, right? The Israelites, they go to these other gods, like a lot of times it's for superficial reasons. Okay, like, oh, I like the raisin cakes there. Yeah. But God will love them again anyway. Okay, and then Hosea recommits himself to Gomer in chapter 3, verse 3. He says, "You shall stay with me many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man. So too will I be toward you." Right? I feel like this is talking about how their relationship really had hit rock bottom. Right? So much history, so much fighting, so much infidelity. But Hosea now goes and takes her back, and he's basically saying, let's recommit one another. Let's recommit ourselves to one another, right? Be with me for many days, right? Yeah, basically like for forever. And so God is saying that this is like a portrayal of Israel's exile and return. Right? Israel, the northern kingdom will be destroyed. It's going to be, a lot of people will be killed. It's going to be rock bottom for them. But God will one day reestablish, his relationship with the people. He will stay many days with them. Okay. So verse 4 and 5, really kind of say this, right? The children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, without ephod or teraphim. That description also is pretty interesting. Okay, it is talking about this time of exile. And when you read the last few phrases, there's no sacrifice or sacred pillar. Sacred pillar is related to idol worship, okay, but the sacrifice is related to the true worship. Ephod is related to true worship. The teraphim is related to idol worship. So it's like God is going to bring them to exile, and there won't be that freedom to really do any worship. But, verse 5, afterward the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Okay, so this incident and prophecy, I think also is a pretty clear reference to what we were talking about in Romans 11. That the Jews that have rejected God and Jesus Christ, right, rejected Jesus as the Christ, they will come to seek the Lord their God and David their king, right? So David's mentioned here is kind of related to the Messiah, right? I think it's basically related to the Messiah. And this happens in the latter days, right? In the latter days. So I think that all can connect to this future time that hasn't happened yet. Okay, we will pause here and continue tomorrow. Let's bow our heads and pray in silence.